Manchester United won, West Ham won. Once again, Manchester United have dropped points at home against one of the worst teams in the Premier League. It was a complete failure to dominate or even to create. It was a bad night. So the first thing that we need to discuss is the theme of the game, because of course in the Premier League you get different types of matches. Sometimes you see end-to-end basketball games, you see games that are heavily reliant on set pieces, or you see a team parking the bus, for example. With West Ham, we were able to call before kickoff what the game was going to be, because we know that West Ham don't like to play out from the back, that's reflected in the numbers, and we also know that West Ham don't press high, that's reflected in the numbers. And what we saw on the pitch was the exact same. Here's West Ham not playing out from the back, and here's West Ham not pressing high. So that means for United, control should realistically be quite easy, because West Ham aren't going to put us under any pressure, so we can quite comfortably play out from the back. Even in the mid-block, West Ham do not get pressure on the ball. So that means the challenge for Manchester United in this game is going to be about playing through West Ham, about slowly manipulating the mid-block and the low block to create chances, to dominate, and to eventually score goals. The problem is, under Ruben Amorim, Manchester United aren't particularly good at doing that. Some of it I do feel is because we lack the personnel to truly excel in those game states, but also because tactically we don't actually set up to do it. Okay, so let's talk about the setup of the two teams, how Manchester United look to approach this. Of course, as always, we are going to build possession with our back three. On this occasion, a very weird, different back three because of injuries. Luke Shaw, Aiden Heaven and Mazraoui. Three very good ball players. A slightly unbalanced back three, but that happens sometimes when you get injuries to a squad. So Heaven comes into the team, and we've got three players here who are very good at manipulating the ball. My only initial question here would be, do we need three players to manipulate just one? You know, I don't know that we do, but it's what we did. It's not the end of the world, it's just a slight thing. What West Ham are doing is actually quite interesting. They left Callum Wilson really high up the pitch. Normally what we see from a team like West Ham is their striker will drop in and help out in midfield, and you might, for example, go for a 4-4-2. But they didn't. They stayed in their 4-2-3-1 shape, and Wilson played really high, actually on Aiden Heaven for majority of the first half. And the reason why West Ham are doing this was to try and lock United to one side of the pitch. You see, when the striker is deep, we can use our middle centre-back as that access point to get to the other side. Whereas with Wilson on Heaven, that was blocked in the first half. So it's quite clever what West Ham are doing. Now for United, it is relatively easy to manipulate and to take advantage of, because if Wilson is here and the likes of Souček and Fernandes are deep, Luke Shaw does have a lot of room to step forward and carry the ball, as we can see here, as does Mazraoui on the right hand side. Loads of time to carry the ball forward. The other thing that United can do is drop Xerxes a little bit deeper. We know that he's a striker that likes to do this. He likes to come and play in midfield and help United create overloads in these zones. And on this occasion, because of West Ham's passive approach, the centre-backs didn't even follow him. You can see here the centre-backs have no one to mark, and Xerxes is overloading in midfield. So there are ways in which United can explore these areas. The problem is, we don't want to. We don't really have an interest in progressing centrally. We don't have many great patterns of play or concepts that allow us to move the ball through the middle of the pitch. We haven't for a long time now. And I think this sort of next 30 seconds is going to play out quite nicely to display this. United have that moment where we could potentially move inside the pitch, but we just don't want to. That's not what the manager asks of us. He wants us to play out wide. You can see that in the numbers as well. Not really any great intent to actually play in the middle of the pitch, which to me immediately is slightly illogical when you look at the players that we've got in the middle of the pitch. First of all, we've got Bruno Fernandes playing a deep position, out of position, but let's make the most of him. Let's at least use him in high advanced positions, perhaps in midfield where we can cause problems. We've got Cunha, one of the best inside players in the Premier League, but we weren't really using him. And Mbeumo, who is playing more narrow than I think is natural to him, but he's still a very dangerous player. We signed these players to score goals from the middle of the pitch, but if you look at their pass map, they weren't really that involved, particularly Cunha, in central areas in the final third. And it's because Manchester United have an inability to play through the middle, so instead our play has to go wide. Now, to be fair, whilst I'm not a fan of always going wide, there was actually a threat here for Manchester United. This is sort of the first positive. There was an early 2 versus 2 that we could potentially access. You see, because of West Ham's shape, Wilson being really high, these three for West Ham were dragged a little bit higher than what I think they would typically be, which meant sometimes we could draw Fernandes out and play around him and then access a 2 versus 2 situation over here, where Ahmad and Mbeumo could go 2 versus 2 against Diouf and Todibo. This is something that tactically I think we did a little bit better. We accessed these zones quite well, and 2 versus 2 you expect Ahmad and Mbeumo to do really well. And there's some examples of this here, the two of them being very close to each other against two West Ham players. The problem was that they're not clicking. again at the moment. We've seen brief spells where they have when we were on that winning streak. At the moment, the two wingers who instinctively are quite similar to each other are back to sort of getting in each other's way a little bit. It's not working between the two of them at the moment. Now, that's not to say it will never work. They're two very good players, and I still think if they figure it out, it could be very dangerous. But at the moment, we're seeing more of the flaws in playing these two together rather than the positives. They're sort of getting in each other's way. These moments should be where they are absolutely thriving, but it's not working. Not helped by the fact that I think Mbumo had a bad night. He didn't play very well on the ball. Amad, on the other hand, was a massive threat. I think 1 versus 1 in the first half, he was excellent against Diouf. He had his number. He was very good at attacking, very good at getting past him. He could go both ways. That was really dangerous for United. But that's all we really had down the right side, I would say, was Amad going 1 versus 1. And down the left-hand side, we know the problem is that we don't possess that same threat. We've got two wingers on the right. On the left, I would say we've got none, because Cunha is more of an inside player, and Dalot is a fullback, now playing as a left winger. And when you're against Wan-Bissaka, one of the best 1 versus 1 defenders anywhere in world football, Dalot's not really going to get the best out of him. So this was the problem for United. We didn't want to play in the middle, because we weren't too interested in that. And down the right-hand side, we only really had Amad's 1 versus 1 threat. Down the left-hand side, we didn't have that, so we were left with very little. The only thing we could really do was get ourselves into the final third and then chuck crosses into the box, and we tried that quite a lot. Now, I don't think crossing is a bad thing. If you put enough balls into the box, you think a defender might switch off, you might get a lucky deflection, but the quality was poor, and as we'll come back to later, we didn't really have the players in the middle to actually attack these situations. Now, this actually leads quite nicely onto my next point, and that is Ruben Amorim contradicting himself a little bit with what he says compared to what he actually gets his players to do on the pitch. Now, I don't know if this is a miscommunication between him and the players, if the players a year in still can't pick up his messages, there's a problem with the way that they're being delivered, or if it's him kind of using this narrative at full time to spin the way that we look at things. I don't know. But Ruben Amorim makes certain comments at full time which don't line up with what he asked for on the pitch. We've just said the only thing that Manchester United had was crosses into the box. We didn't play centrally at all. We struggled down the left. We struggled down the right. The only thing we had was crosses. That was the game plan. Ruben Amorim puts an emphasis, he always has done, on playing wide. That is Amorim's idea, to get the ball wide. Yet in his post-match interview, he says that the problem was that we crossed so much and we didn't have the players in the middle to cross to. We didn't have the quality players in the centre that we would want. We didn't have the profiles. But that's his tactic. He asks the players to cross. We've seen it 3 games in a row now, a lot of crosses into the box. So what's going on there? He thinks we're not good at crossing. He thinks we don't have the players to cross to, yet persists with playing wide from where we are ultimately forced to cross into the box. That doesn't really make sense. The other thing he said was this after the game, talking about defending a lead, talking about wanting to defend away from United's goal, to high press, to keep West Ham under pressure. Sure, that's great, but if that's what you want to do, why do you take off Joshua Zirkzee for Manuel Ugarte? And I don't necessarily think that sub directly leads to United dropping off, because Cunha can go up front and press, and Bruno can press, and he will do that from that position, and Ugarte is a hard-working player, he doesn't mind pressing as well. But I think this is where psychology is so important. Too many people look at formation and things like that. The psychology of the sub is huge. If I'm a Manchester United player, we're 1-0 up, I'm thinking at home we should be going for the kill. We should be going for 2-0. That's what this club has been built on for so many decades. So for my manager to bring on a ball-winning midfielder for a striker, whilst it may not make a massive tactical impact on the side, I think it's a massive psychological impact. And that's something that top managers have to consider when they make these changes. The message that you send across to your players. We're 1-0 up and you bring on a holding midfielder for a striker. As a player, you're telling me we want to defend now. And ultimately, that's what United start to do. We start to drop a little bit deeper. We started to defend more, partly because we never had true control on the game anyway. And when we do that, particularly with this 11, granted, Heaven came off for Euro, you know, that's not a great back 5 for defending crosses into the box, for defending corners and things like that, and ultimately it cost us. Then the other thing that doesn't make sense to me is just the positioning of players. Again, we talk so much about formation in football, and I think we talk about it too much. For me, the most important thing is to get players playing in zones of the pitch where they want to play. So, for example, you know, Bruno's a player who should be playing high, Cunha should be high, Mbumo should be wide coming inside. Amad is another player that should be very high and wide. I think particularly when you want to score a goal, he should be. Yet here we are in the 90th minute with the score tied, and Amad is still playing a position as a right back. It just is illogical. Now, the reason why I've approached this video a little bit differently to what I normally would do is because I don't want to sit here and shout at Ruben Amorim and have a go, because it's almost not worth it. It's more confusion for me than anger. I don't understand what's going on. Normally we would break down sort of how West Ham defended, potentially how West Ham carried a threat and things like that in that last segment there, but I don't think it's worth doing. There's a confusion here. The messages that Amorim is giving us and giving the players don't match. They're not the same. He tells us he wants to do one thing, yet on the pitch we see him asking his players to do something very different. He said he couldn't make a more attacking sub than Ugarte for Xerxes. Like, of course he could. Kobe Mainu for any of them would be a more attacking sub, so that doesn't make sense. We had Cher Lacey, who, you know, isn't a world star right now, but Amorim said himself that he is ready to play, and he still couldn't make a more attacking sub than Ugarte. So again, that's contradicting. Cher Lacey's either ready to play or he's not, and if he's not, why is he on the bench? Things like this don't add up from this game, and again, that's why for me today it's confusion more than anything. I don't understand what we've watched once again, and 12 months in it's becoming a real problem for me, because I'm struggling to see what the identity of the team is going to be in 6 months. But if Amorim was here in 2 years, what would we be good at? That's what worries me a little bit. I sort of can't see the direction we're heading in, and the bits I can see aren't great anyway. So maybe from you guys today, what I want is a comment letting me know what I'm missing. What is it about Ruben Amorim's football at the moment that I should be backing? What was positive in this game? What did we get right? Ahmad played well 1 versus 1, and Bruno Fernandes was a workhorse again and was everywhere and so good on the ball for United. Apart from that, I'm struggling to find the positives from the performance. A lot of players not in the zones of the pitch where they should be. We're not attacking with the intent that we should be. Defensively, we're far too passive, and we've been sitting here saying it for 12 months. So today, more than anything, I'm sort of just baffled and lost and disconnected by the whole thing. So yes, that is all I am going to say for today's video. You can tell I'm just disconnected from this football club right now. I don't understand what's going on and what the direction is. So we're going to stop the video there. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help so much. Apart from that though, we're done. So I'll see you in the next one.